We're going to talk about AnchorWeave, which keeps AI video worlds from warping by remembering local spaces and camera movements. We're going to talk about the future of smart fire extinguishers. That's right, AI robot vehicles partnering with the classic fire extinguisher. I mean, why not? We had smart underwear in the last video. Why not just have smart fire extinguishers? In fact, you'd think this one would be invented before that one. We'll dive into Steve Yegg's opinion piece called The AI Vampire. And think about what point he's trying to make when he says being in the same room with AI is draining people. We'll look into consciousness as a virtual organism. Yeah, it's a weirdly compelling model of the you that is you. There's some people saying that crypto value and AI value can't coexist. Are they mutually exclusive? We'll look at that argument. On first glance, you want to think so, but then maybe there's something to it. Should you mine crypto or should you process tokens? Oh, the dilemma. We'll look at where generative AI and bioscience is right now and some emerging biosecurity threats and roadmaps to reduce real-world risks as they become more, real. We'll talk about a new machine eyeball that could give robots superhuman reflexes. Yeah, that's what it's actually talking about. Not a camera, but an eyeball running on a brain-like chip. So we're going to talk about what chatbots can teach humans about empathy, because there's more than you'd think there. I wanted to dive a little deeper into some of the numbers that are being spent on the AI build-out and how that compares to like the building of the original internet. There's a new AI blind spot hack that could allow attackers to hijack self-driving vehicles. Sarah from Substack decided to read every major AI's lab safety plans so we don't have to. You may or may not like the thresholds and triggers section, but you'll definitely like the mitigation possibilities. The local stack published a technical deep dive into what you're actually verifying when you get verified with LinkedIn. So yeah, I pretty much knew it was happening. I just tried not to think about it till now. If you wouldn't mind pressing that hype button, look at how close we got to 200 hypes on the last video. All right, so what's at the heart of this paper, AnchorWeave? Is a solution to a big problem when generating new video. It's remembering where things were when your own memory begins to fade. Its own memory of the world that it lives in starts to break. So most long video generators forget what world they're in after a while. When the camera comes back to where it was originally, the room might have shifted, objects drift, or like new stuff can even appear. Now, a lot of the newer systems try to fix this with a single global 3D memory. So they kind of rebuild this one big 3D scene from past frames, and then they render like what they call anchor videos from it to guide the next frame. And that works a little bit, but it turns out these global 3D memory systems do start slowly poisoning themselves. Because it's stitching things together, if there is a small depth error, it means some wall will get rebuilt in a slightly different place. And then when you fuse those views into one global model, the errors start to stack up. So AnchorWeave kind of flips the memory idea. It stores many small per frame local point clouds instead of one fused world together. And then it retrieves a few that best cover what the next camera path will see, and then it weaves multiple anchors together with pose-based weighted and shared attention. Memory stays clean, model learns to reconcile small mismatches instead of amplifying them. Next up, let's jump over to here some AI robot vehicles that are learning to team up and extinguish fires. So there's a team that used something called multi-agent reinforcement learning. It means multiple AI agents are learning by trial and error together, but they didn't throw the robots into chaos day one. They built this 3-stage curriculum. First, one robot learned a simple navigation. It just moved around obstacles. Then multiple robots learned to move around each other and the environment. And then only after that did they face a full firefighting scenario. So multiple robots, multiple fires, obstacles everywhere. Because of this step-by-step training, the unmanned ground vehicles could team up with simulated robots, split into groups, and extinguish 2 fires with a full 99.6% accuracy. The robots even self-organized, reducing how much humans had to control them. And the researchers are about to push this model towards swarms that will make extremely fast decisions on their own when it comes to putting out fires, using using data from the sensors that they're collecting as they're in there putting the fires out. So it's a pretty wild sort of swarm system that they're building. It's structured learning. It teaches the basics first, then teamwork, then complexity, and that's really what makes it unique. But hey, 99.6% of fires being put out, that's a future I can get down with. All right, let's talk about vampires. You've heard of the regular kind, then you probably even heard of time vampires, but now we have AI vampires. So Steve Yegg wrote this opinion piece basically arguing the AI isn't making us more productive. It's just quietly changing who gets your extra hours. So he argues that the real danger of AI isn't that it's going to make us lazy. It's that it's going to make us 10 times more productive, and someone else will capture that value, not you. So if you use AI for 8 hours a day and then, produce 10 times more work than you used to, your company gets almost all of the upside. You probably, in many cases, will end up getting the same salary. You're going to get more exhausted. You'll probably have to learn a lot of these tools on your free time just to keep up. And that is what he's calling the AI vampire. It is a time vampire. If you swing the other way and you only work for 1 hour a day with your AI, you do get to keep all the benefits, but your company loses, and eventually it will collapse or get outpaced. So the real battle isn't about productivity, it's about where the value is being captured. Who gets the extra 9 engineers worth of outputs? Companies are built to extract value from employees. Startups are sprinting to this future like it's the gold rush. And executives are looking at supercharged developers and seeing headcount reductions in their near future. Employees are burning out, chasing unrealistic standards set by extreme early adopters, and the solution isn't to stop AI. Your dollar per hour stays fixed, but your hours don't. If AI turns every hour into a high-intensity decision work, then your workday shrinks 3 to 4 focused hours, not 8. Because if you don't set the dial yourself, somebody else will set it for you, and the vampire doesn't stop feeding. So if you're being more productive, talk to your boss, talk to the people around you, explain how much more work it is to be that productive, and everybody can win, but you don't want to burn out. So you might have to communicate that with your boss. All right, we'll switch gears and talk about consciousness. There is a kind of new thought that you can think of consciousness as a virtual organism, and that's one of its best descriptors. So let's bridge the gap between modern science and age-old wisdom. Vin Bellaro writes an essay that proposes a novel model of consciousness that attempts to bridge the long-standing gap between modern science and ancient wisdom. He will be extending Carl Friston's theory of active inference. Let's go. Okay, so we'll just kind of imagine for a second. We're going out there just to do sort of some thought experiments. What if your suffering isn't coming from reality itself, but it's coming from a virtual creature inside your head trying to survive? It's an interesting question. So the self, it might not be an illusion. It might behave like a virtual organism that lives inside of you, though. And this essay is going to sort of build that story up from 3 different pieces. First, they're going to start at the lowest level, active inference. That's the idea that living things survive by building models of the world, predicting what will happen, and then acting to reduce prediction error. After that, you get the second step where the brain creates a simulated self. It's an ongoing model of, me in the world. You probably modeled someone else. Then you were like, well, that other person's like me, so I can also model myself, me. You sort of wake up in that sense. And then third, there's an abstracted layer of virtualization. So like a cloud drive that looks like one disk but hides many layers underneath, you can put them together and then consciousness becomes this virtual organism. It builds its own model. It generates its own, quote, what if scenarios. And those what if scenarios are what we call wants and desires. When reality matches them, we feel good. When it doesn't, prediction errors pile up. The tension is suffering. And if you take all of that and wrap it together, you sort of come to the conclusion, or you realize that you can't eliminate suffering by crushing desire. This virtual organism is wired to survive and model reality. It will resist being shut down. The only real option is to keep updating the model, sharpen awareness, improve alignment with reality, and eventually shift from trying to control reality to appreciating it. Not because you gave up, but because your model matured enough to see its own limits. We commonly think of consciousness as a little person inside of us, suggesting an intuitive grasp of its life form-like quality. Next up, let's talk about Bitcoin miners switching over to do AI inference. Because the benefit is definitely switching. But Jose Crespo writes, Anthropic is killing Bitcoin. The AI native currency already exists, hiding in plain sight, outperforming crypto by 6 orders of magnitude. So what's going on here? And this is a pretty outside the box article. You'd think that maybe Bitcoin would be displaced by some kind of other cryptocurrency, some Solana or Ethereum or Cardano or something like that. But no, maybe the token that's used for AI intelligence is the new crypto. So this article actually isn't saying that AI is going to create a new cryptocurrency. It's saying that the currency already exists and we're already using it. Every time a company calls Claude's API, it pays in tokens. Not metaphorical tokens, measured units. Over 300,000 organizational budgets go towards them. They forecast in them. They track costs in them. That is a unit of account. That is a token as well as something we use in AI. So it's weird. You have to kind of step outside the box to think about what's going on here. But each time an API call is done, it's a real-time exchange. Compute goes in, intelligence comes out, payment settings instantly get charged. So that's a medium of exchange with final settlement, if you think about it. And it's behind every token, or behind every token sits this physical infrastructure, data centers, chips, long-term power contracts, roughly 100 billion in contracted compute capability for Anthropic alone. That's a store of value that's backed by a productive asset and not speculation. So in that way, it almost seems like a better investment than, well, I wouldn't say that, but it's like, it's different than something like just a store of value, maybe more like Bitcoin, although it has more maybe scarcity because you can't just keep adding compute to it. But either way, it's an interesting thing to think of just tokens as being closer to a cryptocurrency than just an actual like measured unit of some kind of computation. The author's core claim is structural cryptocurrency architecture and Anthropic's infrastructure map one-to-one tokens, ledgers, settlement layers, security through infrastructure commitment. But Bitcoin runs on a 2009 design. Others improve every time AI models improve. I mean, there's updates to crypto, obviously. There's a huge ecosystem around that too. But it's just interesting. Crypto tried to build money on top of rented infrastructure. Anthropic built the infrastructure first, and then the token system just emerged naturally. And the shift isn't ideological, it's economic. Some buildings, same electricity, 7 times the margins, capital flowed through physics. And now the, AI coin is already up and running. He's saying the people who built their careers on crypto were quietly moving their chips to the other table. When insiders built lifeboats with their own money, that's not a cycle. That's the end of an explosive crypto coin Cambrian era. Bye-bye BTC, coin mining, AI data center leasing, operating margins. Oh my gosh. What $200 billion in 15 years brought crypto? That's interesting. What did 15 years of adoption and 200 billion invested? So if you think about the 200 billion that just this year alone, if not more than that, went into data centers, is that about how much went into crypto overall with all the coins? Unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value, settlement rails. I don't know. Somehow I'm not totally buying this one-to-one argument, but I'm going to just keep thinking about it because there could be something about the idea. It does feel like in the future something like electricity or tokens might be the currency that matters the most. Would it break into functional units of tokens? That would be interesting. All right, let's jump over to biosciences. We've got some emerging threats to talk about, plus some roadmaps to biosecurity. So most biosafety policies today are built around one moment, like a moment where DNA or RNA gets physically ordered or assembled. But this paper is warning that Gen AI creates risk before that moment at the design stage that needs to be addressed immediately. So a model can generate protein variants, viral-like genomes, or toxic small molecules without any order being placed. That means the usual screen, the sequence order, the screen and contain technique can be skipped. And the paper gives some Examples of how this could happen: jailbreak prompts can trick bioscience models into unsafe outputs. Even when guardrails exist, one red teaming framework called Safe Protein reported jailbreak success as high as 70% of the time against top protein generative models. And it's not just design, it's also speed. AI agents can plan multi-step workflows, call tools, and even connect to lab automation tools, turning a vague request into an end-to-end pipeline instantly. So the roadmap shifts from one checkpoint to all these different layers that need to be thought about. You have to filter risky training data, you have to align models during fine-tuning, and then you need to monitor and screen inputs and outputs in real time. Yeah, so the authors are arguing that we need to embed a multi-layer biosecurity guardrail across the whole Gen AI lifecycle right now, restrict and filter training data, and not just hope that the DNA synthesis layer is going to keep us safe. All right, robots of the future might be getting an I upgrade, EYE upgrade, not the letter I, as in their sense of self. So what we got here is better software. A lot of people think that to make robots better at seeing, they need better software, but this team did the opposite. They changed the hardware. Instead of analyzing every pixel like a normal computer vision system does, looking through eyes that would be technically cameras, like machine eyes, they actually built machine eyes that copy the way that your retina works. And the way that our retinas actually see this world around us, we don't take in the whole scene. Cameras actually take in the whole scene. It mostly watches for motion. In humans, we have special cells that store a brief memory of what you just saw. When brightness shifts, those cells fire. That comparison, past versus present, is what lets you detect movement almost instantly. So these researchers decided to build this neuromorphic chip that works the same way. It stores and processes information in the same place, just like a neuron does. So it doesn't waste time shuffling data back and forth like traditional chips do. The chip first flags only the part of the image that is moving, and then it runs a standard vision software on just those areas. And that single shift focused on motion first cuts processing time by about 400%. And in one test, it even predicted a pedestrian's direction in about 100 microseconds. That is faster than human perception. So the breakthrough isn't just a smarter algorithm, but it's teaching machines to ignore what doesn't move. And I could imagine one of these new type of chips, on the outside of a Tesla, a self-driving car, seeing something run into the street and move rapidly. Even if it's on top of the other cameras, just having something that can move that quick and maybe give a signal to the system could be very helpful. Or imagine if you have like a security robot, just keeping an eye out for anything that moves. Kind of reminds me of meerkats, how they always like stand up and look out for bad guys. They're always looking for motion, movement. What are you looking for, bro? Moving. Anything that moves, so you can alert the others. All right, next up, let's talk about empathy. So AI might be better than most people at spotting real empathy. Surprisingly, I know it's hard to believe, but yeah, most people think that's kind of a human thing. They think empathy is something of a personality trait. You either have it or you don't. But this study flips that idea. Researchers at Northwestern University looked at empathy as a communication skill, not a feeling, a pattern in how we speak. So they gathered 200 real text conversations. One person shared a personal problem. The others tried to respond with support. Then they asked 3 AI models, 3 human experts, and hundreds of regular people to judge how empathetic those responses were. Here's the surprising part. The AI models judged empathy almost as well as the experts and much better than the average person. That's pretty wild. Like, the AI model judged empathy better than an average person. Why? Because these models have seen huge numbers and examples of people trying to make others feel heard. They've learned the grammar and the structure of empathetic language. And the study suggests something a little uncomfortable, that basically empathy isn't just an instinct. It has a pattern, and many of us have never been specifically trained to recognize those patterns. We just picked it up. The researchers even suggest AI could help train doctors, teachers, and therapists to communicate better soon. So as strange as it sounds, we might be able to learn how to be more human by studying what AI has learned from us. Okay, so written by Claudio Lupi. He was reviewing quarterly reports Wednesday afternoon, and he heard about $185 billion capex from Google's parent company Alphabet. He pulled up the earnings call transcript, and sure enough, it was true. Not a typo, $185 $135 billion. For context, that is more than Google spent in the previous 3 years combined. It's double what Wall Street analysts expected, and it's more than the entire GDP of most countries. And he says over the last decade, he's seen it all with tech, but this is something different. So the Alphabet announcement broken down. Last year, spending $91 billion. 2026, spending $175 billion. Wall Street's expectations were $119 billion. So the delta is that Google's spending 55% more than even the bulls predicted. And look at Google above Meta. I mean, Meta's coming in at $135 billion, Microsoft at $140, Amazon $125, but Google at $185, $600 billion in 2026 being spent on these servers. For comparison, the entire global telecom investment boom of the late 1990s, the one that laid fiber optic cables across continents and ocean floors, peaked at roughly the same relative levels of GDP. And the crazy thing is, despite beating earnings, Alphabet actually made more money than people expected. Their stock still went down because they saw how much money they're about to spend. And the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, admitted something that should make every CTO stand up straight. I do expect to go through the year in a supply-constrained way. Let that sink in. Google is planning to spend $185 billion on AI infrastructure, and their CEO is already saying that it won't be enough. All right, next up, let's talk about an AI blind spot in self-driving cars. Researchers have found a hidden AI backdoor that could let hackers quietly take over a self-driving car. So, a new cybersecurity study from Georgia Tech reveals a serious weakness in the AI systems that power self-driving vehicles. The vulnerability is being called VillainNet, and it targets something known as the super network. A super network is like a master AI system made up of billions of smaller tools called subnets that switch on depending on driving conditions. So researchers found that an attacker only needs to poison one tiny subnetwork, and then that malicious code can stay completely dormant, hidden among billions of normal configurations, and it only activates when a specific real-world condition happens, like rainfall affecting road conditions. But once triggered, the attack works almost every time. So in tests, VillainNet succeeded 99% of the time while staying invisible inside of the system. Detecting it is extremely difficult. Researchers say checking for the back door would require 66 times more computing power than current verification methods. And as AI systems grow more complex and adaptive, hidden attacks like this become harder to spot and easier to deploy. The researchers call it a wake-up call for stronger AI security defense before these systems are widely trusted on public roads. All right, so just to put this out here, OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google's DeepMind have all said that they're building something that could actually go catastrophically wrong. I've heard Sam Altman talk about these. So you have to then ask, like, well, what do your safety plans actually promise? What do they look like? What actions are you actually taking, not theoretical? And in summary, each one is trying to do sort of the same basic thing. Test powerful AI models for dangerous abilities, then apply safeguards based on the results. They track scary capabilities like chemicals and biological, radiological, nuclear, all of that. They also track autonomy, like whether the model can act on its own, survive in the wild, or speed up AI research. And they track cyber risks, though Anthropic treats cyber more like a watch and wait, and OpenAI adds a special category called persuasion, meaning changing people's beliefs. All three talk about running evaluations, or evals as they say, meant to reveal worst case behavior even after fine-tuning or jailbreaking attempts. But Sarah basically says that none of them clearly lists which evals they run, which ones they will in the future, what exact scores trigger action, or exactly what mitigation will work. So the big takeaway is that none of these companies have full plans yet, and maybe they can't because things are changing so much, but they're more like plans to make a plan, the way she described it. While at the same time, the CEOs of these labs are still warning the stakes for getting it wrong could be enormous. Finally, let's break down a really interesting article of somebody who's pretty darn smart, seems to know how to actually understand some of the lower level verification steps that are happening when you go on a tool like LinkedIn to actually get one of those identity check marks. So this blogger wanted to get one of those blue verification badges on LinkedIn. Now, this doesn't have to be just LinkedIn. I think this can be a very similar system for many social networks and many trading platforms and all of that stuff. But in this case, it asked him to scan his passport. So he did it. He took a selfie. 3 minutes later, done. Got his check mark. But then broke down what happened because LinkedIn doesn't handle the check itself. A US company called Persona does. And that's, he said, where things got pretty serious. So where does this data go? So LinkedIn receives your full name, birth year, government ID, verification result, and a blurred version of your ID. Everything redacted except your name and portrait. Also with access, Persona's service providers, vendors working on their behalf, their global network of data partners, affiliates and subsidiaries, like related companies that share common data systems, okay? Anyone who buys Persona in a merger, acquisition, or bankruptcy, your data goes to whoever buys it, and law enforcement. Says this is where it gets interesting. Here's all the sub-processing companies like AWS, Anthropic, Mongo, Stripe, Twilio, all sorts of people. And the biometric data they're collecting is the mathematical geometry of your face. So that comes from your selfie or from your passport photo. It's not just a picture, it's a numerical map of the distance between your eyes, the shape of your jawline, the geometry of your features. It's data that uniquely identifies you. And he argues, unlike a password, you can't change your face if it gets compromised. So if you're curious what they have, you can request your data under GDPR. They have 30 days to respond. You can ask for a request to delete the data. Verification is done. LinkedIn has the results. There's no reason for Persona to keep your stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of know deep down the extent of just how little privacy we have and how much identifying information is out there. I mean, I've seen AI systems that can tell by the gait, the way that you walk, who you are. So even if you have like a mask on, you can be seen. The patterns that we have just from all of our actions are just so identifiable. I can't imagine anybody really can keep true privacy in the future. I mean, you would have to really, really think hard about it and have some serious systems for keeping yourself self-private. But, yeah, I don't know, for better or worse. I mean, here we go. And AI is absolutely going to become superhuman at tracking this stuff down. So Kara Warner is back with some articles about how we make people around us kind of shut down without realizing it. I thought this was another insightful kind of little small list that we could just go through. I'm trying to, be less just sitting here in front of the computer all day and a little more in the real world with real people. And you know what? It's important that we don't rush moments instead of letting them breathe. When someone is sharing something vulnerable and we move too quickly to reassure, advise, or resolve, the nervous system just hears one thing. This is too much. Let's move on. Rushing rarely feels supportive to the body. It feels like urgency, and urgency often feels unsafe. So guys, if your girlfriend is like trying to, lay it out for you, we got to let that moment breathe. Another way we can accidentally shut people down is responding to facts instead of feelings. Saying things like, you're remembering it wrong, or that's not what happened, I didn't mean it like that. It's just, it might be true, but it's also just, you're trying to build some factual, logical argument against somebody who feels a certain way, and we're just shutting them down. And what we need to do is get them to open up, to calm down, and then we have to have some trust that even if it's logical or not, their emotions are being honestly conveyed, and those are what we want to start fixing. Or not even fixing. Even that sounds like I fell back into that pattern. Just changing or asking them what they want the correct feeling to, feeling safe, feeling calm, feeling excited, curious, passionate, not scared, not rushed. Number 3, our attention turns inwards instead of staying with them. You ever heard anybody say I'm sorry you're feeling that way? It's no acknowledgement of them at all. It's just back on you, or become kind of narcissistic. Are you listening to somebody while preparing the perfect response, or are you actually listening? Just to listen so that you can understand what they're saying. Being listened to is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference. We might be shutting other people down by moving into self-protection instead of staying open. This is kind of like rushing the moment, just being willing to listen. You can protect yourself, but you can also be present, rarely both at once. So if you're feeling attacked, try to stay out of it. Be like, this is not about me. This is a feeling that I'm feeling. Step back from the moment. And you can also shut down people through judgment, prioritizing being right over being with. And if you really care about someone and you don't want them to shut down and you want to get to a solution, then you have to be right. And finally, I want to tell you about the fifth dimension. Sure, you know X, Y, and Z, up, down, left, right, back, forward. And you're pretty familiar with time. It's a little quirkier than the others, but you know, time keeps on cruising. But what about tau? This is pretty fun. Theoretical Physics and Ontology, Joseph Julian, Part 1. The quiet dimension that explains why things finally become real. This will be a good one to leave you on. We're going to talk about the dimension of tau today. So we use space to describe where something is, right? The first three dimensions. We use time to describe when it happens, but this ASA is arguing that we missed a third dimension. It is called tau. It is written as the Greek letter tau, and it does not measure location or duration. It measures how finished it is, how real it is. So low tau would mean that a system is still undecided on an outcome, like a sentence forming in your head before the word arrives. Fuzzy, overlapping, not locked in, not clear, not solid. But a high tau would be that moment when it clicks. Once you've said the word out loud, everything, all that ambiguity has now collapsed into a single outcome. It now has high tau. In quantum physics, this replaces the idea that the observer causes reality to collapse. Instead, it's a dimension. Collapse happens when a system reaches enough coherent depth, enough internal stability that it cannot remain undecided anymore. Tau is described as a kind of depth in that sense. Not physical depth, but a coherence depth. Systems wobble through possibilities, then they settle when that depth becomes steep enough. I imagine like a dice bouncing around. It's all like wobbly. Its tau is very low, and then it lands in one direction and its tau becomes very high. And maybe at a certain point, it's got a high probability of just being on two sides, and then its tau is moving up. The essay extends this idea to seeing it everywhere: particle masses, dark energy, memory, identity. They're all framed as patterns that have reached enough tau to now hold together. So the core claim is simple. Reality is not made of static things. It's made of processes that have finished deciding. And tau is the dimension that when it becomes high means the decision is done. Now you probably have a low tau on whether or not you're going to press the hype button on YouTube. But maybe for some of you, that will become high tau and it will become locked in and clicked into place. So if you want to support the channel, hit that hype button or just do the usual thing. I've got a Patreon, or make a comment or share it or any of that stuff. And we'll just keep making all these videos. We'll take this ever-changing world day by day. It is getting crazy out there. I'll go collect some more interesting articles and we'll do this again in a couple days. We'll see you later. Bye.